Righto guys, X-Pro single-sided fork. How do we assemble the mid-valve? Well, the mid-valve can be configured in any way to suit the user's application. The way we send it out is with roughly about a 0.7 float, which you need to check and measure when you restack it. This sort of suits everything from fast single trail, a bit of hard enduro. We've got some guys doing a lot of jumps. How you configure it's entirely up to you. We'll just give you recommendations and how to adjust it here. We have got a sheet with some settings on it, but it's up to you to figure out what it is you're trying to achieve. So here we've got a ZF stem. We put our ZF stem in. So the first thing we need to do, so we've laid out our shims. So we've got our compression shims and our rebound shims, and our extra shims here with our new piston. So the first change we made is we made a backing washer, right? And this gives the ability for the 8mm shims to flex up against something so that they don't fatigue and break. So the first thing we've got to do is we can lay out our shims, and they fit down into that little step there, like so. And you just got to push them on to the shoulder. Okay, we've got a little spring in the kit. A little spring sits down over there like so, and then we've got a 14mm which sits down over that, and then we can stack them on like so. Obviously making sure everything's clean, ready to go. Now, so we'll see here, so we can wiggle that and it will actually get down over the little step on the stem. I'll use two hands here. Right, and you see there's a little bit of a step, right? So that step sits in to the step on that piston, much shallower than the original design. So this is how we adjust the float. So that sits down on over there. Now, if we just tip that over to the side and we use a little tool, we can see the shims move, okay? That's your float, guys, right? So if we want to decrease the float for going faster and hitting harder stuff, then we use these spares and we stack them underneath that 14mm washer in between this thick washer here supplied. So stacking that out reduces the amount of float, okay? Likewise, removing some of those increases the float. Then on top of that, so then we've got our rebound side. So we can just easily stack our shims like so. Now you'll notice that the shim stack is actually very similar to, well, it is the same as the OEM shim stack, because the shim stack works quite well. It just fatigues and breaks because it hasn't got any assistance. So what I mean by assistance is it can flex too much, so when the forks push too hard, there's nothing to stop it flexing all the way open. Okay, and then we've got our new washer for the top, and the only thing we keep out of the original one, apart from the stem, is the nut, and that goes down on there. Now obviously if you want more float and you take shims out, you may need to put those extra shims up the top here so that the nut does actually come up against something and doesn't bottom out on the shaft. So if we rotate it over once again, we can now see, okay, so we've got our stack out and we've got float. Now we can take some feeler gauges, and we can measure in this gap here with some feeler gauges, and we can adjust that there to the gap that we want for the float that we need. Alright, so that's how we do, that's how we set it. I'll leave it up to you exactly what you use. If you use our specs and stack it up, that works quite well all round. Okay, so we've decided that we want to slow the fork down a little bit. We can't get enough out of the clickers. We want to reduce the float. So what we're going to do here is we'll just quickly show you where to use these spare shims, where to place them to reduce that amount of float. So undoing our top nut. Okay. Use whatever you've got, pull all the shims off, grab hold of the bottom washer here, and you can just pull that and all those shims up, and what it leaves behind is just all the small ones, right? So if we wanted to increase the float, we would take those few washers off. We want to decrease the float, and just get all those washers, chuck them down over that step there, and put our big washer back on, down on the step, the spring, 14 sits down over that. All these shims, make sure they sit back over the step there so that they're not caught when the piston goes down. Piston on, rebound shims on, and of course we must use Loctite and torque up the nut. But for demonstration purposes, okay, so now we can see that we have reduced the amount of float. You can reduce it further, you can increase it more, it's entirely up to you. Okay, so bleed in this circuit doesn't really need it, but we have worked with some guys to test, for guys that are doing super slow hard enduro stuff. On here we have our face shim, okay, and that's a 25mm shim. We can actually take that off and just leave the 24 there if you want to play with bleed without having to drill the piston. So let's just take all these shims back off, back to the face shim here, and we'll just pull off. So that 25 will sit him aside. Now, if we get that shim and put that back on, now you may be able to see it there, but so now we've taken that 25 off, we've just given a bit of bleed in there. Naturally, you can bleed into the side of the port with the drill bit of your choice. 1mm in one port is generally what people would do for slower, more technical riding. I'll leave that up to you guys. So why don't we know the exact shim stack for your OEM mid-valve? This X Pro upgrade was always about a budget upgrade, right? It was just fixing the flaws in the fork. Now, unfortunately, the manufacturing tolerances on this mid-valve, as well as our washers and our piston, there's always a discrepancy. It doesn't matter who makes it or where it's made, there's always tolerances to work with. So that's why we can't give the exact shim stack setup for this. $250 upgrade. It comes with a piston, it comes with end plates, it comes with instructions, and it comes with the two shim stacks. So you've just got to take 10-15 minutes in working out the best, at setting up the float for your best situation. Thanks for watching.
you, mate.